He thought nothing could shake him. A millionaire CEO, used to power, respect, and control. Every room he entered bent to his presence. But all it took was one unexpected moment, inside the back seat of his own luxury car, to unravel everything he believed about himself. A little girl, small in stature but unshaken in spirit, would deliver words so piercing they silenced a man who thought he couldn't be touched. What could a child possibly say to make a man like him stop cold? This is the story that will leave you questioning everything. His name was Richard Harlow, a man who had built an empire brick by brick, or so he liked to remind everyone. At just 45, he was the kind of CEO whose face appeared on magazine covers, his sharp suits and polished smile a symbol of untouchable success. He lived in a glass tower overlooking the city, drove cars worth more than most people's homes, and walked through life convinced he was untouchable. To the world, he was a story of triumph. To himself, he was proof that money could buy respect. But what people didn't see was the arrogance beneath the surface. Richard had grown used to people lowering their gaze when he walked past, used to silence when he spoke, used to the idea that his wealth put him above others. And perhaps that's why he believed nothing could ever challenge him. Not a competitor, not a rival, not even fate itself. That evening, as his driver pulled up to the curb of a downtown street, Richard climbed into the back of his luxury car, scrolling through emails, barely noticing where he was. The leather seats cradled him in comfort, the tinted windows shielding him from the world outside. He thought it was just another night, just another ride home. What he didn't know was that someone was already waiting, someone who would shake his confidence to the core. The car eased through the city, headlights cutting through the dusk. Richard leaned back, half listening to the hum of traffic, his mind consumed by business deals and profit margins. But then the ride slowed unexpectedly. The driver muttered something under his breath, stepping out of the vehicle. Richard barely looked up, until the back door opened and someone climbed in. It wasn't another executive or one of his assistants. It was a little girl, no older than 8 or 9. Her dark skin contrasted against the pale leather seats, her clothes worn but clean, her small hands clutching the strap of a faded backpack. She didn't ask permission. She didn't look afraid. She simply sat there, her presence filling the space in a way Richard didn't quite understand. Richard's first instinct was irritation. Who was this child? Where was her parent? And how had she dared to enter his car? His hand hovered over his phone, ready to call security or the police. But something stopped him. The girl's eyes, steady, unflinching, and strangely calm, locked onto his. The silence stretched. Richard cleared his throat, about to demand answers, when she spoke. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp enough to cut through his arrogance. "Shut up." 2 words. Just that. Richard froze, stunned. No one spoke to him like that. Not board members, not politicians, not even the press. He opened his mouth, ready to lash out, but the girl continued, her tone steady and unwavering. In that moment, Richard felt something unusual, a flicker of unease. This wasn't defiance for the sake of being rude. There was weight behind her words, a kind of authority he didn't recognize. She wasn't just speaking to him as a man. She was speaking to everything he represented. The driver returned, confused, but before Richard could order the girl out, she leaned forward and whispered something that drained the color from his face. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't an insult. It was a truth he had spent years burying under money, power, and pride. And in that instant, Richard realized this encounter wasn't an accident. This child hadn't wandered into his world by mistake. She was there for a reason he could no longer ignore. Richard's breath caught in his throat. The little girl's words struck like a blade, simple but undeniable. "You're not better than us. Money doesn't make you more human." For a moment he laughed it off, a hollow sound meant to disguise the sting. But her eyes never wavered. They held him there, pinned like a man on trial. In that silence, all his titles, his bank accounts, his polished reputation, they felt small, almost laughable. The driver glanced nervously in the rearview mirror, waiting for Richard to explode. But he didn't, because the girl wasn't done. "My mom works for men like you," she said softly. "She cleans your buildings. She comes home with her hands bleeding, and you don't even know her name. You call yourself powerful. but you don't even see us." The words echoed inside him, bouncing against walls he had carefully built for years. Images flashed, faces he had ignored, workers whose names blurred together, the countless lives he had stepped over on his climb to the top. For the first time, the mask of superiority cracked. Richard wanted to speak, to defend himself, to remind her he gave people jobs, opportunities, a living. But the excuses died before they reached his lips. Deep down, he knew the truth. He had never seen them. Not really. The car seemed smaller now, suffocating. He shifted uncomfortably, but the girl's gaze followed, unrelenting. She wasn't afraid of him, wasn't impressed by the glass towers or the tailored suits. She had stripped him of the one thing he valued most, control. And in that raw, unguarded moment, Richard felt something he hadn't in years. Shame. The kind that burns, the kind that demands change. The car rolled to a stop at a red light, but Richard hardly noticed. His mind spun with the weight of the girl's words. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about quarterly reports or shareholder meetings. He was thinking about faces. The janitor who nodded at him every morning, the cafeteria worker who handed him coffee without a thank you in return, the security guard who held doors open but never got more than a passing glance. The little girl didn't shout, didn't cry, didn't demand. She had simply held up a mirror, and he hated what he saw staring back. When the driver asked if he should remove her, Richard shook his head. Instead, he sat there in silence, listening. Listening to a child who spoke truths that no boardroom ever dared to tell him. Her words were not just about him, they were about a system, a world where wealth excused ignorance and power silenced empathy. By the time she slipped out of the car and disappeared into the night, Richard felt different. The city looked different. For the first time, the tinted windows of his luxury car felt less like protection and more like a cage. That night, he didn't climb his penthouse stairs with pride. He carried the weight of every unseen face, every silenced voice, and though he wouldn't admit it out loud, he knew. The little girl had done what no rival, no critic, no competitor ever could. She had humbled him. Her words were a lesson, a reminder. That dignity is not measured in dollars, and humanity is not owned by the rich. And maybe the real question isn't what she said to him, but how many more of us need to hear it too?